Where did Avram get up to yesterday? So I got a little bit ahead.
He got to last, I have it here, it's Rav Nachman, Omer Rav Nachman.
Okay.
On,
The last three words on Samach
Yeah.
Alpha base. Okay. Amar Rav Nachman. That's what we'll start from. Haya Baki Bahenu Vishmaiseyan. If someone knows how to identify with clarity what a Paris is and what an Osnia is, and if you know how to identify them, then oif haba b'simanecha tahar. If you could find an oif, if you encounter an oif that only has one siman of tahira, and you know that it's not a Paris and an Osnia, then in fact you could eat that bird. But loy hayabaki bahenu vishmaiseyan. But if you did not know with clarity how to identify a Paris and an Osnia, if you find a bird with only one siman, it will be tame because it might be the Paris and Osnia, which you don't recognize. But bishnei simanim, but if you find an animal with two simanim, then you could be sure that it's tar, provided that you know how to identify the only bird with two simanim that the Torah states is tame, which is the oirev. So bishnei simanim tahar v'hu sheyakir oirev, provided that he can identify an oirev. Are you suggesting that the only tame animal, the only bird that's forbidden to be eaten with two simonim of kashrus is the oirev? But Tanya, we learned oirev is a oirev. The Torah says vesa oirev liminoi. Liminoi comes to add another bird to the set of birds that are prohibited to eat. Liminoi, Rabbi Eliezer Omer lahavi es hazarzir. That includes a zarzir, which has certain similarities to a oirev in that it has two simonim, but it doesn't have the same two simonim as the oirev. And Rabbi Eliezer holds that since you often find the zarzir living in the environs of the Arvim, there's a saying, birds of a feather flock together. So therefore, it's justifiable to argue that the zarzir is a min, one of the species of an oirev. Amr Laila Rabbi Eliezer. They told Rabbi Eliezer, how could you say that it's forbidden to eat a zarzir? Right? This is the most famous hechsher. The famous hechsher is, of course, it's kosher. Yeder esmes. Everybody eats it. So everybody eats it is the most famous hechsher. So they had that in those days as well. You know why? It has one of the simonim of Tyre, which is a zefek, which typically an oirev does not have. Amaleh and Rabbi said, I don't care. This is a bird that's aser. And therefore, if they're eating it unlawfully, and afhei nasidim litin asadin. Davar acher, but there's another Tana who has a different pshat in the Leminoi, and he holds it's lahavi senunis levana. What we're also prohibiting to eat is the senunis levana. Rashi says it's an arundaila. I don't know what this species of bird is, but it's the one that's white. Now, in fact, it's a black bird it has white patches on it. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer. Amrullah, they told so Leminehu, I'm sorry. So Leminehu is, I believe, a different no, it's the same thing, it's Leminoi. Dovracha Leminoi, Lahavi Shanunus Levana Divrei Rabbi Eliezer. Amrullah, they told him, how could you say that the Shanunus Levana is going to be Aser? Balai Anshe Galila Elya, the people from the upper Galil, Oichlenoisai, they eat it. Why? Because it has another one of the Simone Tahira, which I guess an Erev doesn't have. Amr Lahem, Afheina Sidin Litin Sadin. They're also eating it unlawfully. Ella Erev V'chol min Erev. Any type of Erev is going to be prohibited to eat, including the Senunis Levana. So Amar member, Hilchasa, how do we paskin? Oif haba b'siman echad tahar. If an oif comes and it only has one siman, it's going to be tahar. What about the Paris and Osnia? Right? Earlier, Rab Nachman said that's only if you could identify a Paris and Osnia. It seems like a Maimer doesn't have that requirement. We need to know why. The Gemara will shortly explain. Who deloy doris. However, that's only if this bird that you found with one siman of tahira is not a predatory bird. It doesn't. It doesn't. It's not a bird of prey. That's when you would allow it to be eaten. Amalei Rav Ashi, Allah Meimar, Had Rav Nachman Mai, what about what Rav Nachman said, that you need to make sure it's not a Paris or an Osniya? Amalei Loi Shemili, I didn't hear it. In other words, Kalaimer Loi severely, I disagree. What's the problem? This might be a Paris, it might be an Osniya. Ma'ika Mishum Paris for Osniya. There's no need to be concerned about that. Less Nahu B'Yishuv. Paris and Osniya are birds that are only found in the wild. Very rarely you're going to ever find them, you're going to encounter them. So therefore, the assumption you can make an assumption when you find a bird with one siman that it's not a Paris and it's not an Osniya. Now Rashi here rounds up the sugya. So let's see Rashi. If you find a bird with one siman, machsakinan lei b'tahar. So the assumption is that it's tar. You don't have to do any more investigation. However, kol kama delechazin le'dedaris. So you don't have to wait for 10 years to see maybe it will be daris. No. If you find a bird with one siman, you can make an assumption it's a kosher bird. But if in the future you see that it's daris, then you realize you retroactively made a mistake. But it doesn't mean you have to be choshit for it right away. And here's how Rashi sums up the whole sugya about birds. V'nirli, shekol oif, hanoisin ragloi al ha'oichel, kishu oichloi. There's birds eat in two fashions. Some of them just take it in their mouth. Some of them hold whatever food they're eating in their feet, and then it pecks away at it. So any bird that you see that the way it eats is it's nice and ragloi ala oichel, keshu oichloi. While he's eating the food, he's actually holding it in his feet. And he's holding it so it shouldn't move. And doesn't take the whole thing into its mouth. Rather, it just chips away at it from what it's holding in its feet. Hu drisa. That is drisa. So not necessarily if you see it attacking a live animal, is it a bird of prey. Whatever it's eating, if it eats it in that fashion, we know that that would be a bird of prey. Who within the arvin that Rashi was familiar with, the way they ate is they would hold the food in their feet and then they would peck away at it, which would indicate that they are birds of prey, which would tell us that they're not kosher. Okay, so to Gemara weiter. So now we have a sheet of a Meimar who's Michael and says any bird you find with one siman, you could make an assumption that it's kosher unless you see that it is a bird of prey, which Rashi explained that it eats in a certain fashion. An oif that's a misaret. Rashi calls it a nashgartner palaz. It scrapes. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's also a type of bird. Kosher litaharis mitzayir. We know you have to take for the taharis mitzayir v'lachu lamitaher shnei tziporim chayos taharis. So this bird is a kosher bird, and it qualifies as one of the birds that can be used for the taharis mitzayir. V'zui senunis levana. Rabbi Yehuda says the bird that I'm telling you is a kosher bird, and you can use it for taharis mitzayir. Rabbi Eliezer clearly says that a senunis levana is not a kosher bird, right? He says laminai l'rabbi snunus levana that has the din of an oir. So v'zu snunus levana shenech lekuba Rabbi Eliezer v'chacham. So Rabbi Yehuda says I disagree with Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer holds that a snunus levana is a bird that's not kosher. I hold it's kosher, and you could even use it for that tahara samatzayir. Amar Meimar b'chivra karsa, if its belly is white. So imagine a robin that has a black body, but it has an orange belly. That's what we're looking at over here as well. So Amar Meir, so if it has a white belly, Kula Amalai Pligi Dishari. Everybody agrees, Rabbi Eliezer also agrees that that's a kosher bird. Ki Pligi B'di Yeruka Karsa. The whole machlokes where Rabbi Eliezer prohibits this bird to be eaten is if it has a green belly. Rabbi Eliezer also Rabbi Nishari. The Hilchasa, and we paskin Karabalazer that a green belly is usher. Marzutra Masni Hachi. Marzutra had a different version of what Rabbi Yehuda said. And this is what he heard. B'diruka karsha kula amala pligid aser. There, even the Chachamim agree. Everybody agrees that this sununa with a green belly is not a kosher bird. Ki pligi, where do they argue? But the chiver karsha. The machlokes is if you have a bird with a white belly, Rabbi Lazar also v'Rabban Sharu, and there v'hilchos hakarabanon the sharu that the one with the white bird is mutter, and that's why Rabbi Yehuda said you can use it for taharas hamasayra. Frank the Gemara. It makes perfect sense if they're arguing by chiyura karsa. Why? Hanyu de katani sununis levana. So if we go all the way up to the top and we look at the brisa, it says in the brisa, davar acher leminoi lahavi sununis levana. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer. If you hold that you're arguing by sununis levana, it makes sense to say that the sununis levana is a prohibited bird. But if you hold that the machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim is by a green belly, but by a white belly, everybody agrees that it's a kosher bird. So how are you going to explain this brisa? We just said everybody agrees that if it's a white belly, it's kosher. Zok to Gemara, Levana lafuke the bati the uchmasi. It's when it says in the brisa that Rabbi Eliezer says lemina lavish nus levana, it doesn't literally mean that it has a white belly, because in fact the one with the white belly is kosher. He means it's a white belly and not a black belly. That's all he means to say, because the ravens that or these sanunis that hang around in our homes, the bati means the ones that hang around in people's homes, they're black. They're completely black. So all he meant was, if it's not a completely black bird, it will also be usher. But avada, if it's a white belly, there he holds his mutter. A little bit dachuk, but that's how we have to explain it. If in fact we hold that everybody agrees that with a white belly, it's going to be a kosher bird. Zok more about there. Amar Rachba, Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Tesil. There's a bird that's called a tesil. Rashi says it's a type of dove. Pasol mishum tyron. The kosher mishum b'nei. We know that a tar can only be used as a carbon if it's an older tar, a more mature tar. A yoina can only be used if it's young. So vibal the tasil is a yoina, it will only be able to be brought as a carbon when it's young, not when it's old. Dat tzipi, Rashi says it's also a type of tar. Dat tzipi or v'tarin shel rachba, the tarin of rachba. I'm not sure what Rachba is, if it was a city or it was a place, but it's called Tarin Sharachba. Ksherin Mishum Tarin, those are classified as Tarin. Ufsum Mishum B'nei they can only be brought as karbonis when they're mature. Matzav Rab Daniel Bar Rab Katina. Correct Rab Daniel Bar Katina the following question. Kala Oifos, all birds, Poislin, B'meichatas. If any bird pecked away at water that was prepared for the mechatos, it makes the water possible. If a bird drank from it. Chutz min hayoina, except for the yoina. The reason why all birds who drink from water that we wanted to use for the mechatos, they passel it, is because the way they drink is they capture the water in their beak, and then when they lift their beak out of the water, some of it drips back down, and then it swallows whatever's in their mouth. So that's called a mayim shenasa b'hem halacha. And mayim, which any malacha was done with, is disqualified from being used for the mechatas. But the yoina drinks much more politely. The yoina sucks it up through a straw. And about the yoina sucks it up through a straw, he doesn't let anything go back. So therefore, whatever the yoina drank is not going back into this keli, and therefore whatever still is in the keli remains as good water. Chutz min hayoina mipnei shemoitzetzes. Frag the Gemara, the im isa, listening chutz miyoina utesil, because we just said that the seal is a type of yoina. So then, even if the seal drank from the water of the mechatos, it should still be kosher. Omar Abzera, no, because the seal isn't exactly like a yoina. Zem moitzitz umaki. The seal, even though it sucks, but it does end up dropping some back down, so it will cause the same problem. Rashi says either because there's saliva of the bird in there, or because of nasaba melacha. But the yoin itself, moitzetz the einoi meki. Since it's only metis and not meki, we don't have to worry about any water going back in. So I just want to share with you Stefanski video on this.
Listen, I have a very stark say. You know the bracha, Hanosin L'Sech Bina, Lavrin Ben Yom Ben Lila?
It's a date.
Like right now, I can tell you, it is mamish night. No? Want to sip?
You are a nice Bacher, but I am an Ashkenazi dove. Mentality thing. Different flocks. The Shadchan said you are a very serious Bacher. Are you down to earth or a bit in the air?
Very grounded.
Are you above the air? Or are you grounded?
Excuse my cold, but you should know I have excellent yichus. I am third generation Tessil. So, what are you looking for in a...
So that's the MDY version of these different birds that drink and spit out. Zok Gemara weiter. Amar Yehuda, Hani Kupshani Tsutsaini. These birds, Rashi says they're toirin in Lashon Arami. So the toirin of Tsutsaini, Ksherim Legabe Mizbeach, the Hein Hein Toirin Shorachba. The Toirin Shorachba that we mentioned on Amar Aleph, that's what these are, the Kupshani Tsutsaini. Meisveit, Frek Gemara Kasha. It says azoiv. You have to take an azoiv to spritz on. I believe it's talking about the paraduma. You have to throw the azoiv. I'll talk straight for some para. So we learn azoiv, only azoiv, but not an azoiv that has a secondary name. V'loy azoiv yovan, v'loy azoiv kuchli, v'loy azoiv roimi, v'loy midbari, v'loy kol azoiv sheyesh lo shem lovi. It has to be a pure azoiv. It can't be an azoiv that has a secondary name added to it. That's not a species that could be used. So oy bazoi, the question is, if you see that there's a hakpada by azoiv not to have a shem lovi, so oy bazoi, the tutzaini, the kupshani tutzaini have a shem lovi. They're turn of tutzaini, which means now Rashi specifically says tutzaini. It's not called tutzaini because that's where we find them. Tutzaini is, the Gemara assumes, is actually its name. So this is the name of the bird. It has a shem lovely. So how could you say that these are able to be used l'gabe the mizbeach? We know when it comes to the mizbeach, you're only allowed to use purebred things, not things that have a shem lovely. Rabbi, it all depends. If all of these shem lovies, these items with shem lovies had existed before Matan Torah, and nevertheless, the Torah constantly repeats Ezoiv, 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 and never did the Torah mention any other type of Ezoiv, even though they were in existence at that time. Vikpi the Torah love, then we say Yesh Lo Shem Lovi Pasul, and that's why by the Ezoiv we say it's Pasul. But the Hani, the Kupshani Tutsani, they were all called regular Torah. They were never referred to by any other name. These other secondary names only developed after the Torah was given. Therefore, it's not considered a shem lovi. Rav Amar, Hani Kupshani Tetsani are good for a different reason. Ba'asrayu stomach karilu. It's like French toast. When you're in France, do you call it French toast or do you call it toast? If you want some French toast and you're in France, what do you ask the waiter? For a piece of toast or a piece of French toast? I was never in France. I don't know. But this bird, when they were in the city of Tutsaini, they just called it a Kupshani. They didn't call it a Kupshani Tutsaini. So therefore, you clearly see that it's not a shem lovely. It was just the birds that you tend to find in that city. Rav Yehuda, Hani Karzi Devei Chelfi. These Karzi Devei Chelfi. Now it's a little bit interesting because Rashi holds that we suddenly changed subjects and we're now talking about insects. Tosha says no such thing. You'll see we're talking about birds until now. In a moment we're going to pivot right back to birds. This is also a type of bird. So Hani Karzi Devei Chelfi, the Karzi of Bechelvi, Sharu, those are Chagovim, those are grasshoppers that you're allowed to eat. With the Karbi, but the Chagovim of the Karbi, Asiri, those are not permitted Chagovim. Ravina, Umalkinon Alayu Mishum Sheretzoy. not only are they usher, it's not a suffix isser. We know for sure these are shrotzim that are usher, and you will get malchus for that. V'yom Rabbi Yehuda, Sarda Shari. Now we're going back to birds. Sarda are mutter, Barda are usher. How are you going to remember these different species? What's mutter and what's usher? We're not dealing with samana with just names. So the way to remember it is v'simanech bar minei marda bar mina marda. I'm sorry, bar minei v'simanech bar minei. What does that mean? Barda stands for bar minei, except for it, meaning it's not allowed. Marda, the bird called Marda, Sveiko, that we're not sure if it's a kosher bird or not. Omer Abasi, Shmoina Sveiko said, there's 8 birds of which there's a suffix. And I'm going to read this in Rashi's order. There's Chuba v'chuga, there's Harnuga v'suga, and there's Kuchilna and Tushlami, and then there's Marda, uvarnafka. And there's Marda and Varnafka. Now Marda and Varnafka are also Sveika, so that proves that the Marda is a suffix. My Sveikayu, what is the suffix with them? What precisely is what we are unsure about? It's because Oivois Taharim Kurkavanon Niklaf. Then Oiv Tahar, we know you can easily peel off the inner lining of the stomach. And therefore, an utmein and animals that are birds that are tame, ein kurkavanon niklaf. You cannot easily peel off the lining of their stomach. The honey, these birds, you could peel off the lining of their stomach, but with difficulty. The hainu kurkavanon niklaf, but only bisakina, only if you scrape it off with a knife. So the question is, does that qualify? Now the question is, if you find a bird with one siman, can you assume that it's kosher? So Rashi adds some information here. So Zokt Rashi, Vishar, we're talking about birds that have 3 simonim, and this is just the 4th one. So Vishar shall shloishes hasimonim uvurorin bahen. It already has a zefek, and it's not a bird of prey, and it also has a it can't be a bird of prey. It has to have a zefek. What was the third? What was the third? There was 4 simonim. Remember what the 4 simonim were? One was the kurkovan's niklaf, one was the zefek.
One was the cloth, the 4th one.
Right, the extra finger. Right, the extra finger. Right. So it has 3. The only thing that we're not sure about is the 4th, because if it has all 4, we know for sure that it's a tar. U'mesav kolon ikilafu. If this is called that the kurkovanim niklaf, hareish lan arba simonim, and therefore v'yotzum misofik kol oifos tamein. But vilav kilafu, that only has 3. Then it could be one of the 20 species that have 3 simonim. Now Tosfos built something beautiful. Rashi says that everything is unknown. We have no idea what the unique siman that the parasha has or the Uzniya has, right? We don't know which one it is. Everything's unknown, therefore everything's usher. Tosfos brings a raya from here that the kurkavanin niklaf, that is the mystery siman that no other bird has. But Tosfos actually has a whole discussion if that's what it is. So Zok Tosfos the gimel simanim shel taira shel yutas oifos hanu etzpi yisera v'zefek ve'inidoris. But the 4th one of kurkavanin niflak, that's the special one that belongs to oibe perish oibe osniya. And Tosfos brings rise back and forth because Tosfos has a fundamental difference with Rashi. Rashi knows we don't know anything, we have to mach on everything. Tosfos says there is a lot that we do know. But then Tosfos at the bottom suggests something different, that maybe that the zefek is the siman haravi. So you see, even Tosfos isn't 100% sure as to what that siman is, but Tosfos does feel that you could bring rayas of what those simonim are, which now helps us identify kosher birds. But Rashi says that everything remains a suffix.
Tosfos isn't one person. There's many Bali Tosfos.
I'm referring to whoever wrote this one.
But can you say that one Tosfos is contradicting another one?
No, I mean there's a difference of opinion
within Tosfos.
That's right. Well, one Bali Tosfos held one way, one another way, I guess.
Right.
But somebody put the Tosfos together, quoting the different Bali Tosfos. So he was probably also a Bal Tosfos. He wasn't over Bal Tosfos. He was a Bal Tosfos, and he took the different opinions that he heard from his contemporaries, and he put them into one text. Okay, but this sugya of birds. If you're a bird brain, you can't figure it out. This is like a very serious sugya as to what's mutter and what's also. Rashi makes it easiest for us because we don't. He says we don't know, and therefore we have to be machmer across the board. Okay, Zok to Gemara weiter. Frank the Gemara, are you going to tell me? Are you going to tell me that just because it doesn't come off easy, that's not a simon of kosher? I'll prove to you that it is. Bar Abza, there was once this goose. The have a bay Mar Shmuel. It was by Mar Shmuel. The loy have a kamikl of kurkavane. They couldn't peel off the lining of the kurkavan, and because of that, they were suspicious that maybe it would be a non-kosher animal. Shmuel put it in the sun. That softened it up. Even the Rafi Iklif. So you see, even if it requires tipul to get it off, that's still going to be considered a kosher. So there's a big difference. Hasam ki Rafi Iklif biyoda. Once it softened up in the sun, it came off easily, and you were able to peel it off with your hand. But hacha, when we're talking about this bird is marda, and these other birds that are shveikis, af al gav de Rafi loy miklif ela b'sakina. No matter how you treat it in the sun, you'll still need to scrape it off with a knife, and that's why we have a suffix if this is considered a kosher bird. Omar Abaye, Tarnagoyl of the Agma, the Tarnagoyl of the Agam, the Tarnagoyl of the swamp, Chad Mishmoina Sveikoisu. So this is a Tarnagoyl, for instance, from Washington D.C., right? It's a Tarnagoyl of the Agma. So Chad Mishmoina Sveikoisu. That's one of the 8 sveikas. Behind the Mardu bird that we identified earlier is also known as the Tarnagoyl of the Agma. Amar Papa, this is very interesting. Tarnagoyl, the male Tarnagoyl from the Agam is Aser. Tarnagoyl to the Agma, the female Tarnagoyl is Mutter, Shori. After the male was Aser and not the female. Now, is it possible to have a species of bird that its male is not kosher and its female is kosher? That doesn't make sense. So Zok Toises, you're right, it doesn't make sense. So I'm looking at the Toises 3 lines from the bottom. Tarnagoyl to the Agma Shori, Tarnagoyl the Agma Sira. Ein lefarish on the cave of Muteris, Vazachar Aser. You can't say that in one species a male is Aser and a female is Muter. Because we know there's a rule, the Chala Yosy Mina Tahar Tar. Any animal that comes out of another animal that's tar. So if a Tarnagoyl tar gives birth to a male Tarnagoyl, Avad it's going to be tar. Ella, what it means is Shnei Minim Hain. There's actually 2 different species. One is called a Tarnagoyl, and one's called the Tarnagoyl tar. But there are 2 different species, and each one of these species have the male version and the female version.
By the way, how does this ammonia help?
It just reminds you that females are mutter and males are also just a way to remember which species of chicken. The female version of the chicken will be mutter.
About a nation of people to know which this particular bird.
I guess it's something that people are familiar with. So the one that's usher, both male and female, the one that's mutter, both male and female. And the Gemara is going to go through a whole bunch of birds and try to...
For the birds.
Exactly, try to suggest aids to remember. Zok to Gemara weiter. Darsh Meremar, Tanagolta the Agma is Asira. He argued, he held the female, not the female, the Tanagolta the Agma is usher, unlike what Rapapa just said. Why? Because Chazuya the Darsa. I once saw that it was Dairis. V'achlan reit, v'hainu Girusa, and therefore it's a Girusa, and it's going to be usher. So we just saw something very fascinating. There was a bird that we had an assumption that until now was kosher, and then one day we see that we made a mistake, because in fact, we saw that it was dairis. And we said earlier that if you have a bird, even though you think it's kosher, but if you find that it's dairis, it's proof positive that it's not a kosher animal. That's right. So Zok Rashi, here we have a fascinating Rashi that sums up the whole issue with birds. V'hanu Girusa, Darminu L'kaman B'per Kol HaBasar, Aser Lon Girusa. Even though the Torah said you're not allowed to eat Girusa, we know that there's every taste that exists, there's a way to taste that. Beheter, Sharalon Lishna the Kavra. Shetaimoy Kitaimoy, that tastes like the Girusa, this bird that's Aser. When we talk, because there's other products that have the same taste that you're allowed to eat. Like basar, there's obviously other tastes that you could compare to it. You like the ones that you buy the artificial. No, but like the Gemara says, you're not allowed to eat basar b'chala, but you're allowed to eat a womb of a cow. So there's anything that the Rebbeinu prohibited there's a similar there's a similar case that's mutter. So here's what Rashi, the final rule. Since we are not clear with how every bird works, nearly the oif habala fanenu yesh lo mishem yidros. Don't assume by default that the bird's not doyers. By default, we have to assume that every bird you're not allowed to eat. The hachtan go to the agma because Rashi says, look what happened over here. They thought it didn't doyers and they allowed it, and then boom, they found that they made a mistake. So who knows how many people ate non-kosher bird? The hachtan go to the agma hay machzikim b'tahira v'lachas man re'usha doyeses. Therefore, Zok Rashi, the ein oif nechal lanu ela b'misayres. We only eat birds where we have a messiah on, like Moshe said earlier. Oif shemasru lanu abiseni b'tahar. If our forefathers said that our meaning is to eat this bird, then we can eat. V'shaloi masru lanu yesh lachush. But if you're a Kamenetsky, then you cannot eat turkey because you don't have that messiah. But you could be Messiah Messiah. I might say maybe the Messiah is wrong. No, on the Messiah you can be Messiah. If your father ate it and your grandfather ate it, then you could eat it too. Kavaltik. Zok to Gemara Vayter. Amarav Shavar and Drafta Shari. That's a kosher bird, but Pirus and Drafta is usher. How am I going to remember that the Pirus version is usher and the Shvar version is mutter? V'simanach Pirus Rashia. In the times of Rav, there was a famous fellow whose name was Pirus, and he was a very bad guy. So therefore, they used his name as a way to remember which bird is the bird that you're not allowed to eat. Amar Rav Huna, Bunya is Shari, Parva is Aser. How am I going to remember that? There was a famous Kishiv Macher, and his name was Parva. So that's how we know the bird of Parva is going to be Aser. Rashi says that he was a very famous Kishiv Macher, Shem Machashev, who also Lishkas Beis of Parva. There's a story in Yuma where he made the Lishkas Beis of Parva. I don't remember the exact story. Weiter. Amra Papa, Mardu, Zogid, Va'achil, that's the name of a bird. Mardu, Zogid, Va'achil, that is a three-part name. Shari, you're allowed to eat it. But Zogid, Va'achil, the bird that's called Zogid, Va'achil, Asher, you're not allowed to eat. How am I going to remember which Va'achil you could eat and which Va'achil you can't? It says, you're not allowed to bow down to God. Sagid means to bow down. So therefore, the Sagid, Va'achil is Asher. So these are just little memory tips. There's a fellow who has a program called Zichru, just like a typical Zichru Ramosim. Yeah. Amar Shmuel, Shasia Chamra. See, nowadays we have it so much easier. You know how you know it's kosher? We only have one siman, and you can follow that one siman. COR. Right? All our animals have the same siman. Forget split hooves, cud. COR. It's one siman. Amar Shmuel, Shasia Chamra Asira, which is also some type of bird. V'simanech. How do we know that the Shasi Chamer would be also? Because we know. Sorry? If you see a bird drinking wine, we know someone who drank may not do avoida. Someone who mixes wine. Asira, it's also asir to eat. Bas mazga chamra, but the bird that's called bas mazga chamra is mutter. The way you could remember it, because we know that the ben is Yafa Mikayachav. Let's do one more bird. Rabbi Yeshua, Shekitna Arichi. If it has long, the name of the bird is Shekitna. The long Shekitni, the ones that are long, Arichi Shukit has long thighs. The Shekitna bird that has long thighs, Visumki, and it's also red, Shari, that's mutter. Visimanech Murmaza, Murzama, Visimanech Murzama. What does Murza mean? It's Shem Oif Shehu Muchzuk Lembatar. Murzama was the name of a bird that they knew was tar, that everyone knew was tar. Vishaik of Aruchin V'Gufayadim. It had a red body and it had long legs, so we could remember that the Shekitna Richi, Saki, and Sumki is also mutter. But Gutzi, if it's short, V'Sumki and red, then it's Aser, Asiri. How do I know that? V'Simanech Nanus Puzzle. We know that a midget is puzzled to be, if the coin is a midget, it's puzzled to the avoida, so the short guy is puzzled. Arichi, Saki, V'Yeruki, if it has long legs but it's green and not red, that's going to be Aser. How am I going to remember that? Yerukim Chullin, we learned when it comes to Simon Terfers. if a animal if a bird fell into a fire and its lung shriveled, remember we learned if it was supposed to be red, the tissue, and it turned green, it will be possible. Okay, so now, for those who have time, we have some more good Stefanski videos.
There were two guys that went all over the world that found out a kosher animal. Green something.
Remember we learned about the shasua that has two backbones? We learned 2 days ago about the animal that's called shasua.
Lifetime in Tatiana.
That's right.
Such an animal?
Here.
That's a Saturday twin.
Okay, that's the shasua. These are Stefanski videos. What else do we have over here? Chagovim. We have the one for the birds. Moititsumeki. Right, so this is not the shidduch one, this is another one. That's why it's possible for the time. And then the last one was Chagovim. Oh, we have the moon also. Okay, so first we'll do Chagovim.
Yes, it was a great class. Sorry, I'm in a rush.
Come for a small walk. We're looking at an insect.
Was macht man sie hier?
Cat.
אתה מכניס אותנו, ופה נמצא החגב הכשר.
Why did it so fast and heated to be honest?
רבותיים, תרצה לטעום? אתה משוקנצ'י, הגב המתוק הזה. נענה, נענה.
The last thing he has is the sun and the moon. I didn't understand this one. See, they're saying Kiddush Levana, but they're on the moon. They're saying Kiddush Levana on the moon. So it is. They're looking up for the moon, then they chapped. You have to look down. Okay, that was the MDY for the day. I can't go today.